What's up, everybody? I'm very excited about this episode. Pete Holmes is my guest, one of my favorite all-time comedians of all time. I met Pete when I lived in LA. We had a mutual friend, Rob Bell, who was also a guest on my podcast a few episodes ago. And Pete has inspired me, definitely as a comedian. By the way, if you've never seen Pete Holmes live, do it. Or watch his special on Netflix. One of the best stand-ups, but go live. What he can do in a room it's magical. There's very few comedians that I see that can walk into a room and have as much well-written material and off-the-cuff, fully present, riffing, connecting with an audience at the same time as Pete can. It's eerie what he can do. And he's just so real. I love Pete because you feel like you get to know him, not just in his stand-up, but in his other work. Pete has a show on HBO called Crashing. Maybe you've seen it. It's Judd Apatow produced. It's so funny and so good, and there's so much heart. There's 3 seasons. Go watch it. He's got a book that I highly recommend called Comedy, Sex, God, and it's one of my favorite books. It's one of my favorite memoirs, and it might just be because I can relate to it so much, because Pete and I grew up very similarly in the like hyper fundamental evangelical non-denominational youth group world, and then sort of found ourselves exploring bigger questions later in life. We're also comedians, although I would never put myself in the same category as Pete. So anyway, Pete came on the show, and what's funny about that is that we did this podcast remotely via Zoom. I'm sorry it's choppy, by the way. I don't know why my camera angle is choppy. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm so sorry. Pete's isn't, mine is. Whatever, you're mostly listening anyway. Cover up the browser, get on whatever you're on, Google Docs, and just listen. But Pete came on remotely because he's in California and I'm here, and we were trying to coordinate a time. And then a week after we recorded, I found out that he was going to be in Alpharetta, Georgia, not Atlanta, specifically Alpharetta, Georgia, doing 5 shows at a comedy club that I didn't know it even existed in Alpharetta because it's new. And I found out about it because I saw Pete posting that he was going to be here. So missed an opportunity to do it in person, whatever. We did it. And it was a really good time, a really good conversation. I feel like I want to apologize for being so serious with such a funny comedian, but I'm not. I'm not going to apologize. I'm just going to tell you this is what it was, because this is what my podcast is. I bring people on, we talk, and we see what happens. And this is what happened. We had a pretty serious but meaningful conversation about a number of things. I'm so grateful. I feel so lucky to have had Pete, who I didn't even mention about his podcast today. He's like one of the great podcasters. You Made It Weird. I've been listening to You Made It Weird since way before I knew Pete. He's got all the guests, and it's like a gold standard, personally, for me, for what I think podcasts should be. It's always funny. They always talk about big things and existential topics, and it's deep, and it's all the things. And I got to have Pete on this show, and I'm so happy. I'm also thrilled about my sponsor that I can't tell you yet. We're still working on some details, but for now, I will tell you that future episodes will be sponsored by easily the most consistent consumer product in my life. And we've been in touch. They're going to sponsor this show. So in a coming episode, I'm going to try to do it with Tyler. I want to get Tyler back on here and talk about the sponsor, but we'll get to that. Anyway, let's do this. Here's Pete. Oh, we're going. We got this.
That looks stupid.
There, let's do this.
Dumb.
Don't you have a product to help with that? Like, isn't that the one problem you shouldn't have?
Watermelons.
There it is. I mean, your hair has looked good lately, I've noticed.
Thanks,
I see
man.
a lot of you. You show up. You show up in movies when I don't expect you to show up.
Yeah.
You show up in my feeds. I try to listen to your podcast, but man, I can't keep up with all the podcasts.
Yeah, my joke is, what do I work for you? That's how I feel about Squid Game. That's how I feel about everything, every dang thing. So it's nice to see you.
You too, Pete.
What's going on, man? You got those sad Tripp eyes.
I'm a dad. You're a dad.
That's what it is. You're just
Life's
tired.
kind of hard. Yeah.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
4, 7, 9.
Yeah, that's on you, bro.
It's on me.
That's your fault. No help here. Yeah. 4, 7, and 9. Smooth move.
How's the family?
We're doing really well. Yeah, everybody's great. I get a little chunky funky around the holidays, but this year has been less chunky funky than other years. And
Why?
I'm really grateful for that.
Just family stuff?
Well, it's not, I don't see my birth family, family of origin. But I feel when everyone's being so jolly, I can feel a little, the metaphor I like is Frankenstein on the beach. Like I'm in the sport coat and I got the bolts and I'm on the beach. Everyone else is in their jam shorts and there's Coca-Cola on ice and volleyball. And I feel like a weird monster sometimes. So Christmas can make me feel that way, that everyone's, singing. My wife loves Christmas. I love that she loves Christmas. But as soon as we're apart and I'm in the car, I'm listening to Radiohead to like restore balance to Frankenstein on the beach. But this year I'm enjoying it a lot more. But it is. It's a time of year.
There's
really
so
wish,
much enthusiasm.
There's so much enthusiasm, and for millions of us, I'll say, I'm confident that there are millions of us. This is a time of the year that is stamped with decades of being in not a hostage situation, but being stuck with a group of people that don't get along for a long period of time. And that sort of lives on cellularly. And so around this time, I like to stay pretty busy, and that helps, and really focus on my daughter.
I would love to see somehow some data around how many people legitimately, authentically just love being with their whole extended family. Like they leave full.
I don't know if that's on offer, even for happy families. I'm not positive, but some people do. I tend to get along with people who don't, and I'll go as far as to say there's two types of people that I don't relate to. One is people that don't eat, like people that don't like love eating. And like seek comfort in eating, not just like, oh, the clam I mean, like they fucking want to shovel it in and shovel it down.
Yeah.
That's group one that I like. And two are people that have complicated relationships with their family of origin. Those, if you like nibble on your sandwich and your mom is your best friend and you're 41, like there's just like a really good chance we won't really like sync
Oh my
up.
God.
It's not like I'll hate you or look down on you, but I don't think we'll merge.
You're speaking my language, buddy. There's so much, because it's not just that they didn't have hard things growing up or even later in life. It's that they may just have not really been willing to look closely. It's like, it kind of says a lot about where they live their life, like more on the surface. And I can learn a lot about a person when I pick up on that.
I agree. I do a lot of jokes about my family, and sometimes crowds in particular areas more than others will back away from me making fun of my folks. So I've had to develop a save line where I say, if you don't have any issues with your family, maybe you're not seeing them enough. So I like turn it on. I turn it on their righteousness because I see my family a fair amount and talk to them a fair amount. And that's like the follow up to that joke is I go, if you think your father's a saint, go to dinner with that saint. Like go to dinner. Like, so we're saying the same thing. Like if you are sort of skating on the surface, and that's not necessarily always true, but maybe you haven't dug deep enough. A harsher line that I don't really mean this, it's a joke, but I'll do jokes about my parents and they're backing away and I go, oh, you haven't realized you hate your parents yet? Like that I think is very funny, but that doesn't work. People don't like that.
Yeah, I could see that. I got to
Sure.
get something off my chest. Like I feel so much pressure right now.
Yeah, what's going on?
I don't know how to talk about something that you probably haven't talked about in public on a podcast. I just feel a lot of pressure. Just
You're
putting
feeling
that out
burdened to come up with fresh topics?
there. Yeah, I mean, all you do is talk. Like at least when you show up in my life, you're talking.
All you do is talk. Yeah,
you're talking.
I know what you mean, Tripp, but I'm sort of talking to myself here too. It's like that issue is stepping out. It's from like a third person perspective and looking at this body of work and this episode compared to other episodes and other things that have happened. It's not, I think the solution is to just kind of drop anchor in what we're doing and allow what's happening and sort of go with the flow. Because if I go on stage and try to do something I've never done or burden myself with that consideration or have a podcast where the guest has been on before, I never say, don't repeat anything. It's like, this is today. This is right now. This is the only thing that's happening. You and I are both already dead. This is long forgotten. Everyone that will ever listen to this podcast is long gone. Every recording of it is long gone. Everything is an excuse to love. Everything is an excuse to connect. We make up these things just for a reason to sit down together. And if you go like, oh, it's going to be graded in some way, like, oh, Pete talked about that here, here, and here, that's unequivocally false. It'll never happen. It'll never be held up to that scrutiny. And all that will happen is that worrying part of you will have robbed you of yet another moment. You could have just been sugar stirred into the lemonade.
Shit, man.
Well, you're talking to someone who has people on podcasts. You know how I always want to start every podcast? As I go, we're going to die one day. Let's talk like that.
I love it. I'll take all the podcast advice you got.
That's life. I mean, the reason I'm clarifying that that's not podcasting advice is I don't want you to think that I'm giving you podcasting advice.
No, I'll take it.
It's helpful to talk about these things. It's helpful to,
but that's,
you and I both grew up in the, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I see. Okay. There's some advice like don't interrupt your guests.
No, I don't follow that advice. Are you kidding
me?
Well,
side trail, one of my favorite episodes of yours, and I've listened to a fraction, but like when you had Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah.
Like you guys were exploding with thoughts. And I was like, neither one of them are going to get anywhere with like how much they have to say, because that guy loves to hear himself talk. And I love to listen to him talk. And I feel like you guys were delving into some areas that you were so excited. Anyway, that's
I know what you mean. Well, that's a good example of a conversation. You're talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson and you're like, don't blow it. But there's like it's like a sword, right? You need to like the sword of confidence, for lack of a better word, says, fuck it. I'm going to talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm not going to do that much research. He should be nervous to talk to me. That's not, I don't really think in those terms, but I'm like, I'm worthy of this conversation or whatever it might be. But then the reason it's a sword is, it's a double-edged sword, as most swords are. And it can also cut you. You can fuck yourself with too much of that. Every time I go up on stage, I'm doing stand-up. I'm trying to thread the needle of preparing enough that I've done the self-care, that I've looked at my notes and I've listened to a set or whatever it might be. And also a good and offsetting that with whatever I say is the show, however I feel is the show, whatever I want the show to be is the show, and we'll all be fine because I'm very good and I don't need to prepare. But you see how those two energies are kind of, it's the same with doing a podcast. You're like, I'm going to prepare, but also it has to be garnished with And even if I never prepare, I will be better. Even if this isn't true, which it isn't, I'll be better than anybody. I'll do it my way. At least it'll be. You've probably heard me say this before, but it's a name drop, a weird flex. Ira Glass. When I was starting my podcast, I happened to be with him for some reason, and it was like, well, what would make your podcast different? And I said, because it's me. Because it's me. So but then that same blade can cut your fucking face off if you don't wield it responsibly. There's a lot of internet content that is just people being like, it's just me being me. So you have to offset
those
that.
People probably just shouldn't have podcasts. Like, not everybody should have one.
I mean, tell that to the internet.
Yeah. But you're right. Yeah. I wanted to do this years ago, and I started this year because I was trying too hard to figure out the angle. And then I finally just decided I just want to do it. That's my justification. I titled it Talking because that's all I know that it is. And so here we are. And I'm glad. And then immediately I'm getting feedback that's like, oh, thanks for having this conversation. I needed to hear that. And it's like, oh, okay. It really is just a matter of showing up and being myself, which is what you do so well on yours. It's like you're you. And you're present.
That. Yeah. I mean, well, that is podcast advice. When people are starting podcasts, I go, don't fucking episode 1, we're going to list the 3 ingredients that you'd put in a soup that others wouldn't. It's like, don't handcuff yourself. I think your idea is wonderful. We know whatever it'll be talking. And as you go more and more, like my podcast has a 3-act structure. It's not always the same, but it's the riff dump, which is just burning off the excitement that we're doing it. It's the guest portion is the middle portion. And then the third portion is meaning of life, UFOs, almost die, that sort of stuff. And we didn't do that by design. And if I had done that by design, it would have been stupid. It ended up being, that's what I want to do. I want to be really excited, like it's sleep over and tickle each other and just be fucking dopes. Then I want to talk about them because I'm usually deeply interested in the guest. And then I want the thing that makes it unique is we talk about the meaning of life or whatever. And we don't even always do that. Sometimes parts 1 and 2 just blend into the third part. The third part is the guest and just being stupid. Because people give off little clues that they either don't think about existential things or they don't want to talk about them. And that's totally fine as well.
You just feel that out. You can kind of tell.
Yeah, but when I started, I was like, oh, I'm single. I'll do a podcast about finding the perfect partner. And it's like, yeah, sure. Then you're going to meet your girlfriend and then your podcast is over. Yeah, exactly. So I applaud what you're doing. Yeah, for sure.
Here's a question for you. What?
Can I say before you ask this question? I'm sorry I made fun of you for having 3 kids. I was in comedy mode, and the real Pete says, "Hang in there." I mean, you do.
No.
That's rough.
You can listen. You can riff. Like you can.
I appreciate it, but I do want to
roast me. Seriously, that's what my audience is here for. That's what they're hoping. Like, be savage. I've got thick skin.
It's all good. I just want to acknowledge that you have 3 children and that's serious. So the fact that you're doing any podcast is incredible.
It's also fun, but it's serious. It's very serious. Thanks for saying that, but roast away.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
All right, hit me with the question.
Of yourself. Here's the question. And then I'll tell you why I'm asking. The question is, what is the biz part of showbiz for you? What's that experience?
I think I love that question. So you've ticked off your box. That's one of those questions that I would like to be asked. So you've done a good job, and I'm not often asked that because I'm honestly fascinated with what show business is. I think the cleanest way I can say it is that it's my job is to deliver myself in a certain state. That's my job, whether it's for a pitch or acting or stand-up. And this isn't everybody's interpretation. My interpretation is show business is I figured out how much sleep I need. I figured out that's why all the sponsors of my podcast are like Magic Mind and like
Right.
Modern Mammals and all these things. Those are the things that I've found that legitimately help me dial in a certain state. Alpha Brain is another one. The coffee that I'm drinking. So what I'm saying is, as a performer, show business, and the difference between being a funny person is I've dialed in and tried to, without being paranoid about it, figure out how do I get myself in a peak state for performing. If I have a pitch, one of the worst things you can do, I just had an audition and they pushed it 45 minutes and I had already done like my breath work and I had already done everything that I needed to do to be ready at that time. And then they pushed 45 minutes. And I was like, well, fuck, man, that sucks. And that happens. You still roll with it. But I'm ready to go at 6:15. That's the business. I'm also like, show business is knowing what you are, which is so gross to say that. But like when I realized I'm a fun dad, I look like a youth pastor. I'm like clean. People think I'm clean, but I'm dirty. That's like my lane. I like talking about the meaning of life. These aren't things that don't get it wrong. I didn't do them to make them part of the marketing. I was doing them, and then I recognized that that's part of the marketing. You go, or the package, I guess you could say. But then like Bill Burr said to me, name drop, when I was just starting, he goes, don't be a dick, be funny, don't be a dick. Jim Gaffigan said, be undeniable. This is some of the best show business advice I got. Don't be a dick is huge. Like he said, keep your head down specifically. And both of those guys were saying something very similar, which was, and Jim said this also, he was like, if you get so funny that they can't ignore you, that's adding business to show. You're going like, I'm not just trying to be funny, I'm trying to be so consistently funny that people take notice. Third name drop, Conan O'Brien said show business is standing in a room filled with everyone playing every imaginable instrument, and you have a little triangle and you're dinging it. And he goes, just keep dinging it. Just keep dinging it, because the consistency of your triangle ding will start to emerge from the cacophonous noise. And someone will go, I've been hearing that ding for a really long time. And they'll get curious about what it is. So I have a lot of show business theories, but they have a lot to do with like, don't be an asshole. Don't be a drunk. Don't be a fucking grab ass. Don't be a smart ass. Any of the asses. Show up. Be who they want you to be when they ask you to show up. That's business. That's business. But that's not just me. That's teachers. Teachers show up and become a teacher. Magicians show up and become a magician. Athletes show up and become an athlete. And they're paid to be in a certain state at a certain time. That's show business. You don't feel like teaching? Fucking get in the mood, Dan. Go to the teacher's lounge and have a cup of coffee. That's show business. You're depressed, but you're in a movie and you're playing a happy guy. Show up. It's not, I mean, it literally is fake, but like find it. If you know, like I do, walking on the treadmill for 33 minutes before my show is as good as taking 5 Xanax and a shot of espresso, do it. I don't want to do it. It's your job.
It's your job.
That's your part. That's show business. And I've known a lot of funny motherfuckers that get caught in the fray. And I have a heart for my people. I'm not looking down on them, but they get caught up in all the things they get caught up in. And next thing you know, they're late to the thing, or they're not this, or they're not that. Some people coast on that and are successful anyway. But I'm not that talented. I have to show up.
Have you done enough yet as a comedian?
Well, yes. The answer is yes. But the interesting, and well, I worry that it's not that interesting. The reason why the show I made, Crashing, is about starting out in comedy is because that's always going to be the most interesting time. The story of a guy sustaining his, cruising altitude is all. Nobody really makes shows. We like shows about people going up or people going down.
That's right.
I'm in a sustaining place. It's not that interesting of a story. But now I look at it like I've planted the fields, the harvest has grown. The reason why I keep doing it is because stand-up really is like medicine for me. I get to once a month be a pirate in no way other than I go on stage and swashbuckle. You know what I mean? I don't drink anymore. I don't party. I'm just saying, like, I go on an adventure once a month. I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. I have a
get
bit
that.
right now where I'm like, I don't do that. I never say I do this for my family. I do it for me, for my mental health, so I can be, so my daughter can see that there are things that matter, that you should go after them. You should figure out what makes you tick and your gift to give and give it. So, I mean, the answer, have I given enough? Of course. And then do you then manufacture new ways to keep going? Like, kind of like Michael Jordan would pretend to be mad at somebody. My motivation is I'm compelled by my past a little bit, not in a guilty way, but I think about the kid. Like when I do a show now and they pay me to do the show, sometimes I think like, actually, you're paying me for the show that I did in Queens in a laundromat.
Wow.
This one I'll do for free, but you're retroactively paying me for
Wow.
terrible shows that I did for a
Wow.
decade. And I'm very, very, very fortunate. I would even say, I don't even like the word, but I'll say blessed. You could say privileged to have gotten to that place. I know a lot of people in that laundromat that are still waiting for that payback. But when you work so hard to build your Iron Giant robot, and you gave 10 years of really, you know, your circadian rhythms and your health and your fucking sanity and any semblance of, I didn't have a friend for 20 years, it felt like. That's not
Wow.
entirely true, but now that I have real friends, I'm like, "Oh, comedians are allies. We're like pirates that happen to be sailing in the same direction," and it gives the illusion of camaraderie. It is camaraderie, but it gives the illusion of friendship. Now that I have real friends and real relationships, I look back and I'm like, I put all that aside. We had Neil Brennan has this great line where he's like, comedians are like people in a bar fight, and occasionally you're punching in the same direction as the guy next to you, and it looks like you're on the same team. Now I have real friends. They don't want anything from me. Nobody wants to pitch something. I don't want anything from them, which is even greater. So I realized that you gave up my normal lifestyle, a lot of my health, a lot of stress, had no friendships. My relationships were sort of strange as well, given this weird lifestyle. And because I did all that to build the Iron Giant, having him sitting powered down in my backyard, it just doesn't feel right to not take it out every once in a while. And because it's really fucking fun. It's really fun.
Yeah. I mean, you have a fun job most of the time. What are the
Yeah.
least fun parts, though? What are the least fun parts about being a stand-up actor, writer?
It's a generous question. I know the answer because I've done so. My wife is a genius, an emotional genius, and other kinds of genius, but she's certainly a genius when it comes to like embodied feelings and knowing what your experience truly is, not what you tell yourself it is, but what it really is. So I was just in Indianapolis, and you notice it. I toured with the same guy, Matt McCarthy, and we always talk about this. The show, after the show Thursday is done, which is the first show, the relief that you feel tells you how tense you were. So you've gotten really good, or I've gotten really good at pretending or pushing down or suppressing that you're stressed out. And you are. And even if you've done this hour so many times, you can't quite get over the fact that you're carrying that. It's not free. The hour is done, Tripp. It's done. I'm not open micing it. It goes from this to this to this to this. It closes. We're done. It's my favorite hour I've done. It's tight. It doesn't matter. You got to get it on its legs in that city on that night. Now you might be jet lagged or a little bit off. You're carrying that tension, and you were, because when it goes away, you feel so good. Then Friday, the two shows, then Saturday, the two shows. My favorite feeling is in between the last two shows on Saturday. all of the tension goes away. There's only one show left. Who cares? You've already proven it. It's reliable. You know you're safe. And then when you're flying home the next day, you feel empty. You feel what was insulated with stress.
Mm-hmm.
See, if you asked me, is your job stressful? I'd say no. But look at the data. The tight ball that you were, even if you're having fun and enjoying your friends and even being grateful, your body is still kind of undergoing a fight-flight situation.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why people don't do stand-up and don't audition and don't pitch, because the tension and the vulnerability and putting your identity or your neck on the line, that is the worst part of it, is there's this cost. So there's anxiety and there's tension, and it all gets mixed up with your self-worth. It still does. Like I'll pitch something and they don't buy it, and I'll be like sad. Like I'll actually, worse than sad, I'll actually feel unsafe. Like I'm like, oh, I'm not who I thought I was. I must be a fraud.
I know that feeling. I know that
I'm
feeling
not
well.
I'm not valuable. I'm not lovable. My mother was wrong. And all of that, by the way, none of those things are intellectual. They're in your body. They come out as, why am I sad? Or for a lot of men and women too, but like for me, why am I angry? Why am I curt? Why am I being quick with people?
Yep.
Yeah, because you have 2 shows tonight. Or you have 2 shows tonight and you're waiting to see if you have a job next year, and you're waiting to see if you got this or this. And that is the sort of underreported cost. I spend 99% of my time being grateful. And then for my own well-being, I have to go like, there is a cost to it. And there's a reason why people are like, that's not for me.
Are you still writing a feature, or did you finish? Are you going to make one? Can you say?
Yeah, sure.
Last time I saw you, you were in the process. I was curious.
Well, dude, it's actually an interesting question because it ties into what we're talking about. Is that it's nebulous. Here's my point. When you work for a company or a person, you are, what's good is also what's bad. But what's good is you have your marching orders and you are doing their mission statement or the company's mission statement, or it might be in part your mission statement, but you have your marching orders. And my wife is now making short films and she's brilliant at it. And when she and I first were together and she didn't have to work anymore and she could just be creative, I was like, get ready, because you have no idea what it's like to look down the barrel of 12 free hours. Like, you just don't know.
Oh my God.
You also don't know. Like, you think you want it. It's Loki in the Avengers, where he's like, you were actually made to kneel. Like you like, it's a horrible monologue.
Yeah,
but he's
I've got some friends that just sold their company.
Yeah.
And like now don't have anything to do. And they have all the money in the world. And they're like, this is hard.
Better get into pickleball real fast. Well, that's why golf, like, you need like a difficult game that's upsetting to simulate what the grooves in your mind have been accustomed to experience.
So you are writing a movie?
No, I did finish a draft of that movie, but when no one's, I don't know, man, like, I almost feel like a Greek play. Like, the gods show up and some voices are louder than others. And sometimes they're loud for a while and they're like, write that feature. And then sometimes, and I spend a lot of my time going like, why aren't I more excited about that feature?
Oh my gosh.
And then I have to go,
so well.
right? But then I have to go like, that's a check engine light. I believe that the pilot of this ship is who you're talking to. But 90% of the activity is happening in my unconscious. We could say subconscious. It's the same thing. And I'm looking at so that's the engine. The engine of the car is my unconscious. And that's where the muses are. And that's where the ideas are and the inspiration. I'm driving the car. I'm like the brain and I'm driving the car. And the check engine light is, hey, Pete, you have a producer interested in that movie. You had a director interested in that movie. You could star in that movie. I would write myself letters like, Pete, this is future Pete. You made that movie. It's so amazing. You should do it. But why aren't I doing it? And once you sweep away self-doubt or loathing or negative things, and you're still not snapping out of bed and jumping to do it, then you have to go like, there might be something off about that. There might be a sexier thing for you. And I use the word sexy because there's an attraction to it. I have to be careful. I get very hot for things when they're new, but
Yeah.
I've matured a little bit, and the ideas that want to be will stick around, and they'll represent themselves to you. But that's a very long way to say I wrote that feature. It's like 200 pages long. It's like an epic. It exists. I like the idea, but this is show business too. There's a slight like, well, the market has changed.
Yeah.
I don't usually talk in those terms, but this is sort of like a Little Miss Sunshine kind of small indie, low concept idea. And I'm like, I just don't know if I would watch this movie if it came out. And that's when, your dick gets soft.
Dude.
Your dick gets real soft when you go, would I watch this if this came out?
Yep.
And the answer is no.
Wow. Yeah, I've been working on the same one for a long time, and I have those seasons where it's like this is where I want to put all my energy. This is the focus. This is what and then I find myself almost forgetting about it. It's like it's so on the back burner, and you said it so well. Like, it's a check engine light. It's like I have to go, why am I not writing this? How can I be so excited about something?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just the anxiety of like, if I write this, then someone will have to read it.
Yeah.
And I've never written a full feature film, right? Like, I've written a bunch of scenes that work great on their own, shorts, sketches, right? But the narrative storytelling of feature film it's a whole nother thing. And then other times I actually go, do I want to write this? Or does 12-year-old Tripp, who wanted to make movies one day, pressuring me to write this? Am I writing it to satisfy a much dumber version of me that didn't really know what he wanted in life, right? And I find there are things in my life that I've had to let go of because they were really just younger, dumber, less informed me deciding that I needed to pursue them.
Well, yeah, we're in the same boat. I mean, I've had this idea that you're talking about for over 10 years. I really like it. But we're back to the double-edged sword of confidence, right? You don't want to walk away from your great movie, but you also want, me personally, I want to have the idea of like, I'll know it when I see it. And I'm looking at my whiteboard and I write down all my ideas. And at some point, the confluence of the idea and the time in my life and the person and the opportunity and the interest, meaning will all collide. And so there's like I'd like to do that. But then I'm also like, all I do is generate ideas. And a lot of the great ideas I've come up with and sold, I thought of after 3 minutes alone in the car, just kind of thinking, what would I do? And there it is. Because look, this is a little woo, but I think we are like antennas, and you can even take the woo out of it. You can just say, if you want to just say a materialist perspective.
Leave it there. No, leave it there.
Leave the woo?
I'll leave the
woo. But you can look at this, for people that don't like woo, you can say the same thing I'm saying from a materialist perspective. But the woo perspective is, I think there is like a swirling sort of aurora borealis of ideas. You can smell it on the wind and which way the winds are blowing. These things are happening. Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling basically channeled Harry Potter, the idea, on a train ride. And she felt like it was written by someone else and it just came through her. Oftentimes, going around Hollywood, there's the same idea. This is a phenomena. You say, I have this idea for this movie, and they're like, someone just sold that movie. It's because we live in a
Yeah.
in a fishbowl. It's happening.
Yeah.
There's certain flavors, there's certain ideas, there's certain things. And like, that's why it's nice to stay a little bit naked. And you and I, with our movies, we might be dragging a big old boulder of like, well, I like movies, my movie's a little bit like Liar, Liar. I like movies like Liar, Liar. Well, I don't know if that's what we're doing, but guess what? I bet there is something that would get you really fucking jump off a waterfall excited.
Yeah.
And I have a Post-it note in my other office, flex, well, my podcast studio, that says clear RAM.
You drop Bill Burr, Conan, and you're like, now I'm flexing. I have another room in my house.
My other office. My other office. Yeah, I know. But it says clear
You've
RAM,
got two
which is
rooms?
something.
Okay, sorry.
Clear RAM means like, when I was writing my book, it's like, finish the book. I'm filming my special next week. Film the special. Clear the RAM. Get it out. Get it out.
Dude,
and
I
then
cannot
have
say
that
enough about
empty can.
that book, man. Like, I've
thanks,
blown
dude.
so much smoke up your butt for that. But like, that book, and I speak for myself and friends of mine, that book was amazing.
Oh, thanks, man.
For
really,
people
really
who grew
that.
up at the same type of time period that you and I grew up in, the way that we grew up, those of us with like a deep longing to understand what we're doing and why we're here. And
yeah,
it was just so good.
Sorry, but I feel like this is in line with what we're saying. It's like, I'm really getting this image. It's like two arms. One of your arms is, I'm going to write a book. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to set this time aside. I'm going to read about how other people wrote books. I'm going to outline. I'm going to have Post-its. I'm going to research. And then the other arm, because there's chapters of that book that I wrote that were like, oh shit, I forgot to write. And I just wrote it and sent it with it. And it's in the book. So it's both. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I feel like that's one of the.
Well, let me clarify. There were some chapters that were
on.
Definitely better than others.
Hilarious. And it was probably the ones that I wrote very quickly. But to tie it into the larger conversation we're having about creativity and our movies is like, yeah, we can grind and polish. And then there has to be this naked, sexy, lightning, confident, sort of warrior, shaman, fucking wild man energy that goes like, I'll know it when I see it and I'll do it when I do it because we're in outer space.
Now, I'll make this even more interesting. The one I'm writing with you. You are the star of this movie. I'm not saying you have to commit to it. I'm saying I have you in mind because you like.
Now I want you to finish it. Finish the movie. Just kidding.
No, like there's no better. Just your essence is my main character.
Oh wow.
And part of what motivates me is because I want to see you. I want to see you in this role, and I will send it to you when I'm done. And that's not I'm not putting on the spot or anything, but I'm just letting you know, like, there is a part of me that I think needs to finish this because that lightning has been there. And there's so many ways, like I'm not going to write a memoir. I'm not going to do that. There's so many different ways to tell your story and to get all of that part of you out, the spiritual transformation, the career ups and downs. And I think this is the way I want to do it. I think that, I don't know if it's this year or next year or 5 years from now, but this is how I want to do it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not because I'm in it, but I think that's great. I mean, only you can know which projects you should pursue.
Right.
And you know what else is interesting is, again, going back to Val, she turned me on to, there's Ayurvedic. There's like 4 types. I'm not going to be the person to explain this. I'm sure people could type it into YouTube and the different types in Ayurveda. But there's one, I think it's called Kapha, and that's what she and I are, both Val and I are. Anyway, Ayurveda is just Indian medicine, basically. So it's really, really old, and it's studying all these different things, body types, but also like it's called your dosha. And your dosha, and I really line up with mine, tells you what seasons you sort of come to life.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I told you I get depressed around Christmas, and I do, but in the fall, that's when I'm like ripping fucking can't stop. And it's really helpful to know when you're in like a low point to go like, yeah, I don't thrive in the summer. I'm not a Dr. Pepper commercial. I don't want a volleyball. I don't like any, I go in the ocean because I can be away from you people. But like, the fall is me. I'm a Tim Burton movie. I'm not a Fast and Furious movie. I'm Sufjan Stevens. I'm not fucking whatever. I don't want to drag some other band. I'm just saying, like,
let's go with
you could say Smash Mouth, but they're
Smash Mouth's great. Imagine Dragons.
Yeah. Imagine Dragons, Vampire Weekend.
Yep.
These are good bands. I'm just saying, when you know your dosha, you can go like, oh, of course I'm not lit up right now, but I will be.
Yeah.
I will be later.
You learn to just obey that and just know and trust that it comes later. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Totally.
I wouldn't have known those Indian words, but I'm very aware that this time of year, going into December, Hannah has to remind me every year when I'm like, I don't have any more. I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do any of this. I want to sit around and I don't know. I don't even know what I want to do when I'm sitting around. I'm out. She's like, you do this every year. I'm like, yeah, but this time, like, it's really all going to shit. Like, I don't have much work. I feel inspired. She's like, this is what you say every December.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't remember, but she's probably right.
No, I don't remember either. And every time I'm in one of those places, I'm like, I should be tracking this. But you don't have to. You can just, if you're in that way, know that another way is coming.
But track it where? In like an app that I forgot I had, like on a notepad? Like,
I think this is journaling. You could just journal it.
But then
I journal.
Where is it?
Dude, I podcast. I could go back to the podcasts last December and see how I was feeling.
Oh, that's a good point.
But I'm not really that interested. I'm just like, this is how I feel right now.
This is how it is. I know, man. Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
I got some questions that my friends who are fans wanted me to ask you.
Great.
Let me pull those up. If you had to channel all the energy that you have put into whatever your next stand-up act is into a TED Talk, what would the TED Talk be about?
That's interesting. So if my stand-up special was funneled into 15 minutes for a TED Talk.
Yep.
I think my stand-up is about being unafraid of who I am. So I think that's what it would be. Not just self-acceptance, but deeply unafraid of who I am. Unafraid of my feelings about the meaning of life, unafraid about my conflicted feelings about my family, my parents, unafraid. Like I talk about how there's jokes about my marriage, there's jokes about being a father where I make mistakes. The whole thing is like mistakes and foibles and follies and things that are difficult, but at least they're true. And the message beyond the message is here's a guy who's not afraid to tell us how he really feels.
Okay.
I think that's the message.
I gotta admit something.
I haven't been recorded.
No. My admission is that I think you're the person on earth that I'm the most envious of. I'm just going to say that because of that. Because it's so clear that you have found the freedom to just actually express yourself. And I'm not talking about in the way that comics do. Like a lot of comics find their voice and they get up there. But I also know that I'll never feel like I know them really. Like they found their craft, but I don't know them. And you have this, well, you made a whole show about your life, but like the honesty that comes out of your podcast, your stand-up, your books, I'm so jealous of it, man. Like I want nothing more than to put something out into the world where I'm actually being, I want to share. Yeah. But I can't. and I remain inspired, but also pretty envious.
Well, the weird thing to say is I think you've picked the right thing to be envious of, because an unembarrassed life, and I don't mean unfiltered.
Mm-hmm.
Sidebar. I hate when people are like, I just call it like I see it. Your shirt sucks. Well, you're an
Right.
asshole.
Right.
Like
That's
you don't
different.
know. That's different. But knowing how you feel, and
Right.
to me, offensive comedy, when I watch comedy and I find it offensive, it's not because it's offensive. It's because they didn't say one thing that they
Mm-hmm.
actually cared about. Or even if it's stupid. I have a joke right now about how I don't like when people make you take your shoes off in their house. That's not serious philosophy, but it's very funny
Right.
to watch someone who's in a minority position. My feet get cold. Don't make me take them off. Yell and call someone a twat and scream, "This is how you host your friends. You're going to embarrass me in front of my wife."
Yeah.
That is the message. So in the weirdest way, I think you've picked the right thing to be envious of, because I, my entire life, have been envious of that. And obviously I'm not a life coach. I'm not even, I wouldn't call Rob Bell a life coach, but Rob would be like, why not? Why not? But like,
Right. But it's so easy for him to say that for some reason.
sure. Yeah. But yes, to me, and maybe we've talked about this before, it's just a slow gas leak. When when my wife left me, my first wife, obviously, I remember thinking like, I'll never talk about this. Like, why would I talk about this? It's too embarrassing. Right. And then you, like, through the grace of having a podcast, I don't mean Christian grace. I just mean the good fortune and the aligning of everything. You know, on one Wednesday, you do say your wife left you, and then you wait for the sky to fall and it doesn't. And you realize nobody's thinking about you nearly as much as you think they are, if at all. And then you realize this is a Dr. Phil thing, but like someone's going to be mad at you no matter what you do. So you might as well be what you want to be.
My reasoning is partly a business decision, right? So I don't have, like, my income comes directly from brands, typically corporate. All the performing I do, all the content I make, it's usually for corporations. So the stage of life I'm in is I didn't create such a predictable revenue in my life that the only thing stopping me from being unfiltered was just my own ego. It's really like, I got to play my cards right because I got to keep feeding my family.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to get called to perform at this corporate event if I say this. What were you going to say?
That you're not alone in that of course that's completely normal. I mean, 99.9% of people can't be their absolute authentic selves and keep their jobs. There's nothing to be ashamed of there.
Well, I don't know that I'm ashamed of being that way. I've accepted it. I'm just saying, when I hear you on stage, on the mic, when I'm reading your pages, I'm like, damn, like.
So you think these corporations are going to read your book and be like, I don't know, this guy said he has second thoughts about this or this?
I mean, they might. I know what they do. I know they vet me on social media. Like when they bring me into to MC an event, which is a big part of my living, is like going in and being the comedic host of a corporate event. They look and see what I've said. You know, if I say anything that's controversial to like someone's politics or their religion, or, you know, they have to.
Are these religious events?
No, they're just corporate. So maybe I am overthinking it.
Yeah, I do corporates.
Yeah. But see, the difference is you're getting to be Pete, the entertainer. It's like, here's Pete's set. When they bring me in, I'm like representing them. I'm the MC.
Well, that's fine. All I hear, you can keep doing that. I feel like that's good news. That's just like being a teacher or a principal.
Yeah.
Or working at Mars M&M. You're in the great majority. And I just don't know. And again, I'm not here to fix that problem. I'm just saying, I don't know if that's, so who, you couldn't go and do stand up that was, or what is the thing that you would want to do that would compromise this?
Well, that's a good question. I would love to do comedy. I'd love to make comedy shorts about my religious deconstruction. I'd love to do.
And
I
you
had
think
this
Mars,
character.
Mars M&M Corp gives a shit?
I do think that. Yeah. I think that.
Well, then put it on a separate channel. Be like, that's the
Yeah.
that's the Tripp Crosby channel, and this is my
Yeah, you're right.
deconstruction channel.
Yeah, and also, yeah, there's probably an element of overthinking. I've written, like, some of the funniest sketches I've written are they're dirty. They're real dirty. Yeah. I've never had the guts to produce one.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't want to shock the audience who's used to me being safe and, safe for the whole family.
Just make another channel.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I guess.
But all that to say, like, good for you.
That sort of
good
sucks
for
because
you.
yeah, I mean, sure. That reminds me of Christianity too. Maybe you just got it on my mind. So much of Christianity is looking at Jesus and being like, good for you. You realize that you and God are one and that you're God's beloved son. Good for you. We sing songs about you. And I'm like, over and over, Jesus is saying, go and do likewise. He's like, do this.
Yeah.
I'm showing you're to transform the way you relate to reality and how you see God and how you see yourself. But we're just like, yeah, it must be nice being the son of God over there. And he's like, man, who do you think you are?
Maybe
have you done Byron Katie, Loving What Is? She has a book called Loving What Is.
No.
I think you would be, only because everyone in the world would benefit from it. But she has something called The Work, which is it's also called Inquiry, where you take a belief. So your belief is, if people saw how wicked I am, they would not love me and they would abandon me and I wouldn't work and I wouldn't be able to provide for my family. And then you just say, is that true? And can you be sure that that's true? And then you find ways that that isn't true, that time that you did that thing and everybody was fine with it. And then you turn it around and you say, like, I could be more authentic and it would support my family. And how do you know that? Anyway, I recommend that book. She can explain it far better than me.
Some of this is clearly just baggage that I'm carrying from the days of performing in Christian environments. I mean, I was kicked out of so many things. We did a sketch. It's my favorite sketch we ever did. It was a pickup basketball game. We shot it in New York. We did it with Lorne Michaels. He had this YouTube venture for a while that we were part of called Above Average, and so we had great actors. And it was a pickup basketball game where instead of playing shirts and skins, they played shorts and skins. So one team was just completely pantsless. It was so fun,
great.
dude.
It's fantastic.
It's so funny. And this was, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago. And then I found out that this organization that is a faith organization that used to hire us all the time, I found out like, they've decided because you did this, they'll never hire you again, which I didn't really want to be. But there's just something about that that's like, it triggers that part of me that I've had since I was little that's like, hey, don't color outside the lines, you get cast out,
Well, here's an interesting question, Tripp. Who told you that?
I don't remember.
I think that's an interesting question to ask, though, because
they did never call us again.
Yeah, but that person's in the way. That's like reading YouTube comments.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like Bob Dylan goes electric and then he walks around the crowd and goes, what did you think? Did you like it when I plugged in my guitar? You didn't?
Yeah.
I mean, It's like whoever told you that, or maybe it was you that looked it up, but like that's no fucking shit, dude. I
Yeah.
don't know, man. It's
It's
interesting. I I don't know.
a lot of my neural pathways were formed when I was performing in faith crowds. I mean, thousands of people. That's where Tyler and I's first ever time performing together was in an arena with 13,000 people. That's where we started, which set a stupid bar for our sense of what it's like to be in a live room. But these were all Christians. These were pastors, right?
Yeah.
And so for 8 years, as we developed as comedians, the only thing we knew was like, here's what you're allowed to do and here's what you're not. And we would find every which way we could to, just to like play with fire in every way we could until it got to the point where we're like, okay, we got to get out of this. This is not good. But I think that really affected my brain. I think I have a
Of
pretty
course.
deep fear of being rejected by authority. That's what it is.
Well,
It's not my
not just
fans. It's not my
authority.
audience. It's like the people that are in charge of me, that would pay me, that would approve of me, that would recognize me. I'm so afraid that those people are going to cast me out.
Well, yeah, and you use the phrase "cast me out." We're talking about your child sense of God as well. So that is
Yeah.
probably like just on the edge of PTSD, and it's something to be compassionate about and patient about, and to be gentle with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, what's tricky about this conversation is you and I both know that if you had a near-death experience, you would run out of the hospital with your ass showing and be like, "I'm not doing that anymore."
Anyway,
I mean,
I didn't invite you in for therapy, but I do really
well,
value
it's
your
just tricky.
perspective.
Honestly, Tripp, the reason why I'm not laying it on thicker is because it's like getting sober.
Mm-hmm.
You have an addiction, and I can't tell you to stop it,
No.
and I won't be here to hold your hand as you go through it. But I do know that it sounds like sometimes I just go like, well, what's the movie is you go, fuck that. My voice and my life aren't for sale. And then you do what's authentic to
Mm-hmm.
you.
Yeah.
And then we know the montage. There's a rocky period. You're not sure if you did the right thing. And in the end, it goes one of several ways. One is it does find an audience. One is it doesn't, but you're super fulfilled. There's lots of different ways it
Yeah.
could play.
Well, I didn't bring this up looking for help. Originally I was just wanting you to know the hard work that you've done on yourself, like all of the courageous steps you've taken to put yourself out into the world. I'm sure it feels more normal to you because of the circles that you run in. I'm sure that you're always around people that have done that. You're around so many successful entertainers. And as a guy that's not, like, I'm just letting you know, I see it, and it is very inspirational. I started by saying I was jealous, but it's very inspirational. Like, I recognize, because I know where you come from. You've taken a lot
Yeah.
of courageous steps.
But I never aligned myself with the church. And I'm
Yeah.
really glad I didn't. I didn't even think of that. I'm not putting it down. I mean, like, it
No.
didn't cross my mind. I always thought when people were like, you could do this church thing, it just felt Bush League to me. I'm not saying it is. But even when like the Chronicles of Narnia was getting made, I was like, I'm not doing that. I want to be in a real thing.
Yeah. No, like
That's totally a real
listen,
movie. I'm joking, but I had this feeling. I was like, I got to be in the clubs with the beer and the crazy people. I want to be there, and I want to
Yeah.
hold my own. Which is so funny, dude. Because I mean, Nate Bargatze is one of the biggest comedians in the world, and he would be out of the price range of every corporation that would hire you or I.
That's
And
right.
so there's ways to. I don't know. I get
It's
pretty
okay.
triggered just thinking about people sort of tapping into that fear that you're a wicked little boy and you're not a wicked little boy.
Yeah, and I, to be clarified, it's less and less of that, and more just, this is the stage of my life where job security matters, and I feel less risky, right? If this were 15 years ago, and I was
Yeah.
where I am now, I'd be like, let's make the sketch, let's just do all the dick jokes, let's say whatever you want on social. But now it's a lot of just playing it safe because I'm a dad with 3 kids and I found a lane that works.
Well, remember, that was my original point, was I'm not here telling you to go sit vicious on this. I'm like, yeah, if you're curtailing some of your views or your full expression for employment, they have a group for that. It's called Everyone. That's a Drew Carey joke. The tag is they meet at the bar.
All right. I've got one final question.
All right.
Because I was reading this, it made me laugh. My friend David said, ask him if he takes any supplements to help him with his creativity or performance.
It's really funny. What's funny about that question, though, is like, there's so much to being a supplement performance enhancing kind of person. And it's a guy that grew up going like, I am every feeling. In the course of a day, I'm a deeply feeling person. I'm a highly sensitive person. And it is overwhelming. So I love his question. It makes me feel seen. But the reason why I'm drawn to things, which is like, you have your coffee before the podcast, you have your, I'm doing my own podcast in a couple hours. I will drink the Magic Mind 15 minutes before we start. I'm looking for some semblance of reliability and predictability, because who I am and how I feel, this is less true than it used to be, but is very irregular. And that can be frightening. And I'm like, nope, if I eat this and do that and this, I will know how I will feel.
I'm with you. And I'm sorry
that's
for
booze
making fun
too,
of
by
that.
the way. No.
Yeah.
I didn't feel teased. I felt seen and loved.
Okay.
That's booze too. That's why booze wasn't good for me. I was like, this will 100% change the way you feel. You know what I mean?
That's the problem.
Those types of things are so appealing to me.
Yes.
I've never been able to make this joke work, but I wake up, I have coffee. I drink the coffee, I have to go to the bathroom. I go to the bathroom, I need to eat. I need something sweet. I eat something sweet, I need some water. I have some water, I have to pee. And then I go, you know how I want to feel? Differently. Like, that's how I want to feel. I just want to feel different.
Yeah.
However I feel.
So well said.
Including if I feel very good. If I feel very good, I'm like, yeah, but I can't feel this way for too long. I'll feel differently.
It's like constantly evaluating the feeling. That's my whole day. I feel like I have so many feelings and I'm so aware, and it's a problem, honestly. Like I have to do a lot to manage as well.
Yeah.
When you're highly sensitive, it's a real thing. Like
that's why it can be kind of darling. I've had psychedelic experiences where I'm like, oh, this is why you love your Apollo Neuro, which vibrates. I'm not trying to do that. I'm saying there's a certain type of person that would be like, there's a thing that vibrates that calms you down. I need it, and that's just win, lose, or draw. That's the way I'm made.
No, the way I get into running, if I want to run, is I find shoes that I think will be gimmicky and help me. Yeah,
and if you want to write, you get an app that's like, you write 1 minute a day for 7 days.
All that. Yep.
And you've written for 7 minutes at the end of the week. Yeah. When I was a kid, I loved art supply stores because I'd buy pads of paper and I'm like, this is what will make me do it. But I wouldn't change it for the world. I'd rather be that guy who's kind of following the wrong path maybe, but at least I'm moving than still. At least I'm moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pete, thanks for being here. It really
My
does
pleasure,
mean a lot
Tripp.
to me.
Always.
It really does. I feel so lucky.
I'm very privileged to be able to talk with you, and I'm glad that we did it.
All right. Awesome.
Do I just leave? I just click leave?
It's only the second time I've used this platform. I think